It sounds impossible, a modern sailboat splitting in half during a routine storm, while older boats nearby keep sailing as if nothing happened. The industry's quiet shift from hand-laid, glassed-in strength to glued-in speed is at the heart of this crisis. Instead of continuous, visible craftsmanship, your life now depends on a hidden bead of plexus adhesive, often laid blind and sometimes not even touching the hull. 10,000 pounds of keel, swinging from glue you cannot inspect. Trusted brands and celebrated designs, yet a single catastrophic flaw. How did we get from bulletproof boats to floating question marks? The answer begins beneath the surface with the forgotten art of tabbing. Inside the hull of a classic sailboat, every joint tells a story of human hands and careful calculation. The old masters did not trust glue. Instead, they reached for rolls of fiberglass tape, resin buckets, and a roller. Bulkheads, the walls that brace the hull, were not just wedged in place. They were wrapped edge to hull with overlapping fiberglass tape, layer upon layer, at carefully chosen angles. Each strip was pressed down, saturated, and allowed to cure until the joint became invisible, just another part of the hull itself. This was called tabbing. It was not pretty. The seams were lumpy, the corners rough, the surfaces often left with a fuzz of glass fibers. But each tab created a direct physical link between the hull and its internal structure. The loads from the keel, the mast, and every crashing wave traveled through these tapes, spreading out across the entire shell. There were no shortcuts, no hidden gaps. The result was a monocoque, a single unified beam. Imagine a continuous arch of stone where every block supports the next. If one part cracked, the force was carried by the neighbors. Boat builders knew the ocean does not pull in one direction. Forces twist, bend, and slam from every angle. That is why the tapes overlapped at 45, 60, and 90 degrees, each layer handling a different kind of stress. The more complex the intersection, where a bulkhead meets a stringer or a shelf braces a hull, the more layers went on. The goal was simple: create as many load paths as possible. If a wave tried to peel the hull away from the interior, it would have to tear through inches of solid glass, not just a single seam. This method required patience. Each tabbing job took hours, sometimes days, of grinding, fitting, laying, and rolling. But when it was done, the boat became a single, seamless structure. The hull, the bulkheads, the furniture, even the engine beds, all locked together. When a heavy keel, 8,000, 10,000, sometimes 12,000 pounds, hung from the bottom, the force spread out like a shockwave, absorbed and shared by every part of the boat. Every joint was visible. If there was a problem, it could be seen, touched, and fixed. There were no blind spots, no hidden shortcuts. The result was not beautiful, but it was honest. And it worked. Boats built this way have survived groundings, storms, even rollovers, with their structure intact. They did not rely on faith in an unseen bond. They relied on glass, resin, and the certainty that every force had a place to go. Inside the old boatyards, strength was something you could see and touch. Every connection between hull and bulkhead, every seam where a shelf met the hull, was out in the open. The workers were not just assembling parts, they were sculpting a single, unified structure. Walk through a shop in the 1970s, and you would find men and women hunched over awkward corners, grinding, fitting, and laminating by hand. There were no shortcuts. Each hull demanded hundreds of hours of labor, often totaling more than 1,000 hours from start to finish. Every inch of tape, every layer of glass had to be rolled out, saturated, and pressed tight. Miss a spot, and it was obvious. A gap in the tabbing meant a gap in the structure. Supervisors could run their hands along the seams, checking for air bubbles or dry patches, and order a worker back in with a grinder if something felt off. This approach was not cheap. Skilled labor cost real money, and progress was slow. A single boat might sit in its cradle for weeks, waiting for each joint to cure before the next step could begin. The interior looked raw, fiberglass edges, uneven fillets, the scars of hand tools everywhere. But these scars told the story of the boat's strength. Anyone, from the builder to the owner, could open a locker or lift a soulboard and see the work for themselves. The structure was honest, its integrity plain as day. If a tab cracked or a joint showed signs of stress, it was right there in the open, ready to be fixed before it became a threat. This visibility built confidence. Owners knew what they were getting. Surveyors could inspect every joint. The burden of proof was on the builder, and the evidence was baked into the boat itself. The cost was high, but so was the reward. A hull that would take a pounding, flex as a whole, and forgive the occasional mistake or grounding. Boats from this era still cross oceans today, their interiors patched and repainted, but their bones as solid as the day they left the yard. Reliability was measured in glass and sweat, not in hidden chemistry. The value was not just in the materials, but in the hours of human effort poured into every seam. The old ways demanded more, but they left nothing to faith. The result was a structure that could be trusted, because its strength was always on display. Inside a modern boat factory, the rhythm is different. The hull, shiny, flawless, and empty, waits in its mold. Nearby, another team assembles the interior skeleton not inside the boat, but on a separate bench. This is the grid, a one-piece structure molded from fiberglass, shaped to fit the hull's curves with built-in supports for the keel, engine beds, and cabin floors. It is built upside down, out in the open, far from the hull it will eventually reinforce. Once the grid is finished, the real choreography begins. Workers roll the hull out of its mold and clean the inner surface. Then comes the adhesive, thick beads of blue plexus squeezed in lines along every contact point where the grid will meet the hull. The timing matters. The glue has a working window before it begins to cure, so every move is rehearsed. The grid is lifted by crane, swung over the hull, and carefully lowered into place. It must land squarely on the glue lines, matching the hull's shape within a fraction of an inch. Workers hurry to clamp it down, using temporary braces and hydraulic jacks to press the grid into the adhesive. The goal is even pressure everywhere before the glue sets. The difference is not just in the tools, but in the speed. Where the old method called for a week of handwork, this process takes a day. The grid can be built while the hull is curing. Once the glue is down, the assembly line moves forward. No waiting for resin to harden, no grinding, no sanding. The savings add up fast. About 20 hours less skilled labor per boat translates to thousands of dollars over a production run. For a yard turning out 100 boats a year, the math is impossible to ignore. Assembly lines hum with this new logic. Each hull receives its grid, clamped and glued, then moves on to the next station for wiring, plumbing, and furniture. The process is streamlined, predictable, and efficient. Instead of craftsmen crawling through cramped interiors with rollers and tape, a handful of workers can install a grid in an afternoon. The factory floor is cleaner, the schedule is tighter, production costs drop, and boats flow out the doors at a pace that would have stunned the old builders. The grid system is not just a technical change, it is a revolution in how boats are built. The structure is modular, the workflow repeatable. The factory becomes less about artistry and more about precision logistics. The promise is clear: faster builds, lower costs, and a finished product that looks as polished as a showroom car. But beneath the gleaming finish, the way the boat holds together has changed forever. Plexus, the blue adhesive at the heart of modern boat assembly, is a marvel of chemistry and a source of quiet anxiety. Unlike the old fiberglass tapes, Plexus is a methacrylate adhesive designed to bond fiberglass to fiberglass, filling gaps up to a quarter inch. It cures fast, sometimes in less than an hour, and holds strong in laboratory conditions. But its strength comes with a catch. The bond is only as good as the conditions under which it cures. Temperature, humidity, and surface cleanliness all matter. Dust, oil, or a thin film of mold release left on the hull can weaken the joint by half. Too much moisture, and the glue can foam or fail to cure evenly. Too little pressure, and the adhesive sits in ridges, never fully squeezing out to contact both surfaces. The process is unforgiving. As soon as the grid is lowered into place, the clock starts ticking. The adhesive begins to set, whether the fit is perfect or not. If the hull is out of tolerance by even a few millimeters, gaps open up that the glue cannot bridge. If the grid lands slightly off, the beads of plexus may miss their mark, leaving dry patches where no bond forms at all. These are the voids, hidden gaps where the hull and grid never truly meet. Once the grid is clamped and the glue cures, the bond is locked in. But the entire joint is now concealed beneath the cabin sole, buried under layers of plywood, foam, and finish flooring. No one can see whether the adhesive made full contact. No one can check for missed spots or contamination. This is the blind bond, the defining vulnerability of the modern method. Unlike the visible, tactile seams of hand-laid tabbing, the plexus joint is a leap of faith. Builders hope that every inch of bead found its way home, that every surface was clean, that the temperature held steady. But there is no way to know for sure. The risk is not just theoretical. If a void forms under a high-stress area, like the keel grid or the mast step, localized forces can concentrate on a thin strip of unsupported hull. Over time, wave impacts and cyclic loading flex the skin at these weak points, driving cracks that spread invisibly. The grid may look solid from above, but beneath the floor, the bond can be fractured, incomplete, or even non-existent. This is the trade-off behind efficiency and safety. The old method left its scars in plain sight, inviting inspection and repair. The new method hides its flaws beneath a flawless floor, asking owners to trust what they cannot see. The chemistry of plexus is impressive, but its limits are set by the realities of mass production, a process where speed, surface prep, and blind luck decide whether the bond will last a lifetime or fail when you need it most. A sailboat's keel is not just a lump of lead. It is a lever, a force multiplier hanging off the bottom of the hull, weighing anywhere from 8 to 12,000 pounds. Every time the boat heels, pounds through a wave, or takes a pounding in a storm, that entire mass tries to twist and pry the hull apart. The forces are not gentle. With each wave, the keel swings on its bolts, transferring both downward pull and sideways torque to the hull structure. The grid and its glue lines become the critical link. Adhesive joints are strongest in shear when two surfaces try to slide past each other, but the ocean rarely delivers force in a single direction. The real enemy is peel. Imagine trying to rip a sticker off a wall. The force lifts, bends, and eventually tears the bond. When the hull flexes away from the rigid grid, the glue joint is asked to resist this peeling action over and over, sometimes thousands of times in a single crossing. Peel is the slow killer. Over the lifespan of a boat, these cycles add up. Millions of flexes, each one a tiny test of the adhesive's resolve. In laboratory conditions, a bead of plexus might survive impressive static loads, 2,000 or 3,000 pounds per square inch in shear. But peel strength is a fraction of that, and real-world bonds are rarely perfect. If a void lurks under the grid or the bond line is too thick, peel strength can drop by half or more. Plexus alone is not a weld. The keel does not care about theory. It acts as a lever arm, focusing stress on the grid hull joint. In a hard seaway dynamic, loads can double or triple the static weight. That means a 10,000-pound keel can deliver instantaneous forces of 20,000 pounds or more to the adhesive bond. Over time, microscopic cracks grow. The glue starts to separate. The boat keeps flexing. The process is silent, invisible, and relentless, until one day it is not. This is the hidden bond failure chain: peel weakness and fatigue. The damage is gradual and unseen, a time bomb under the sole. Check your boat, tap the grid, lift the floorboards, and look for signs that the bond is failing before the forces find the weakest link. The chain of events that ended with the loss of Cheeky Rafiki began long before her crew set sail. This Beneteau First 40.7 had survived at least one hard grounding in her life, a sudden violent halt that sent shockwaves through the hull and grid. Afterward, repairs were carried out, but the critical question remained unanswered. Was the bond between the hull and the grid still intact? No one lifted the soles. No one checked beneath the floorboards for cracks in the glue or voids where the liner had separated. The inspection relied on what could be seen, not what was hidden. At sea, the Atlantic delivered its verdict. Heavy weather battered the boat. Each wave flexed the hull, prying at the grid, working on any weakness left by the grounding. The forces that once traveled safely through glass and resin now found a shortcut, straight to the weakest point. The adhesive, already compromised, began to peel and shear. The grid and the hull started to move independently, the glue joint failing silently beneath the crew's feet. A marine surveyor later traced the sequence: prior damage, unverified repairs, hidden debonding, and millions of stress cycles at sea. The keel, once supported by a unified structure, now hung by the skin alone. When the final bond gave way, the keel tore free. The boat capsized, and 4 lives were lost. The tragedy of Cheeky Rafiki is not just a story of a single boat, but a warning. When the bond between grid and hull is hidden, so is the risk. The consequences are not theoretical. They are measured in lives. Right now, thousands of modern hulls cross oceans with their strength hidden and their weakness invisible. As manufacturers double down on speed and efficiency, safety becomes a silent gamble. The next storm will not care about production margins, only structural truth. In the end, trust in your boat is trust in what lies beneath your feet. How sure are you of what is holding your world together? Share your thoughts below.